Can you imagine justice and love? 65 years ago, Martin Luther King Jr. stood on this very stage, seeing the sea of faces with relief mixed with disdain, belief tension with restraint, soothing balms, and those up in arms, resolve ready to sound the alarm, and others wondering, how's there been harm? Well, when for centuries humanity's harmonies were off-key and polarizing by the stench of voices, dominating sound that could only carry one note, the song of privilege. The broken chords of injustice, the berating of systemic oppression. No, the song of humanity was not filled with the ringing cymbals of hope. It was a monotone death of the Imago Dei we broke. Can you imagine? Justice and love? See, justice too often is choked by the power of privilege's pockets, posturizing its position as promising partiality when in reality we realize define the narrative, the red, white, and blue, strung with a road of casualties, yet we casually say that inequality was quantitatively only predominant in destructive dominance back in the day. Sounds about white, I'd say. I won't dismiss the irony. But America's clothes need ironing because we've slept in the same lies for far too long, wrinkled by complacency of offices without term limits, but quick to see termination hit us when a voice gets too strong. How can there be justice without love? If what is just is for the benefit of society as a whole, then why has there too often been holes in our citizens? And when we ask the citizen, we're met with cynicism in the same old systems, leaving the guilty prisoned and innocents lost in prisons. I wonder, can you imagine justice and love? This was the fervor of MLK Jr. ringing above the noise of a society thinking equality and equity was a choice. See, your grandparents' parents, maybe even you, lived in a time where drinking the same water from a fountain was disgusting and devoid of the way things ought to be. Seriously, it hasn't been a century since sitting at the same bar counter, in the same diner, using the same bathroom wasn't allowed to be enjoyed. Equality and equity shouldn't have to be a choice. They're at the core of Imago Dei. See, since the first day of the concept of days, we were all made in the image of God. Can you imagine justice and love? See, the root of imagine is image. And if we are all created in the image of God, then justice and love are tied to who God is. Listen, I ain't trying to preach at you, but I hope you know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s foundation of his mission and vision came from scriptures imprinted with its truth, that the Jesus he beloved and believed in walked out the proof that love and justice were never meant to be separated but elevated for all people. And I hate to burst your bubble, but MLK Jr. didn't follow a white man's religion because Jesus wasn't a blue-eyed Caucasian European, but a carpenter from the Middle East, so the classic paintings don't fit his description. And the Jesus I read about showed that though justice and love were a decision, he made an incision in the systems he lived in. That justice and love for the oppressed, the orphaned, widowed, broke, and sick were intrinsic. That no culture, people, or skin was meant to be enslaved and diminished, but embraced and freedom given to live in their God-given right as a human. Can you imagine justice and love? That maybe reparations aren't a separation from what is owed to generations of people who lost the power of inheritance and investments, occupation, and their family's population. Can you imagine justice and love? That wages aren't discriminated because of your gender, ethnicity, or what your name is, but equity is given to all employed in the same placement. Can you imagine justice and love, when a guilty verdict isn't for those who can't afford representation, but for those who chose to be the jury on death, blinded by biases and defying sense, when an innocent says, "Don't shoot," in countless situations? Can you imagine justice and love? Using our voice and actions to break down oppression and not allow concession of systemic racism to continue to have possession of power over progression. Can you imagine justice and love when hate is not even in our language, but the tidal wave of love is so powerful that discrimination can't live? I wonder, Can you imagine justice and love the way that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did? I don't want it to just be a dream. I don't want us to wait for another mountaintop. We're called to care for the least of these and to love everyone because everyone is made in the image of God. Let's not just imagine. Let today spur each and every one of us in our own lives, not just a passion or a brief reaction, but to a life of love and justice in action.